unanimously. Excellent. All right. Item B5, report on 2016-17 Smarter Balanced Assessment Results, MCS Data Dashboard, and LCAP Local Indicators. All right.
Tonight, Educational Services will provide a report on the 2016-17 Smarter Balanced Assessment Consortium SBAC results, the updated Modesto City Schools data dashboard, and the local indicators for the new California dashboard. The detailed report includes multiple year comparisons of student performance. This is our 5th year providing student metrics to the board and the community through our data dashboard. Tonight, our new Director of Assessment and Evaluation, Josh Schroeder, will present. Following Director Schroeder's presentation, I will make some concluding remarks prior to questions from the board. Please welcome Josh Schroeder presenting his first report.
Thank you. Good evening, Board President Zuellen, members of the Board of Education, Superintendent Abel, and the Cabinet. I'm Josh Schroeder, Director of Assessment and Evaluation. I'm here this evening to provide a report on the 16-17 end-of-year Smarter Balanced student performance data. I will also be providing a broad overview of the district data dashboards. School site data such as Smarter Balanced assessments are reviewed during principal summits. Site and district administrators routinely examine student data. Data dashboards are presented to our stakeholders such as you with a focus on helping understand district-wide student outcomes. Stakeholders are looking at data more frequently and are using the data to make informed decisions. The dashboards are updated and adjusted annually to refine how we extract and report our data. The board agenda item tonight provides the comprehensive data for each data point on the dashboard. In honoring everyone's time, I'll be providing a broad overview of the Smarter Balanced assessment results and the district's data dashboards. I will share areas of success and where improvements are still needed. This slide provides a small background on the Smarter Balanced assessments. The SBAC is part of the California Assessment and Student Performance Progress System, also known as CASP. The assessments were administered in the spring of 2017. The results are used to measure student growth. The Smarter Balanced assessments are computer-adapted assessments focused on the areas of ELA literacy, math, and science. It is important to note that the California Science Assessment was in the pilot test phase. These assessments provided data which assist teachers and administrators in deciphering areas of success as well as student needs, ultimately resulting in increased student outcomes. Smarter Balanced assessments provide communication to help parents understand how their child performed on the assessment. The assessments also provide insight to our teachers, revealing needed areas of improvement for the students. These reports assist the district in identifying strengths and areas that need improvement in our educational program. This year we had nearly 13,600 students participate in and complete the Smarter Balanced assessments. The grades that participated were 3rd through 8th grade and 11th graders. In 2017, the district participation rate, we had a district participation rate of 97%. In addition, 12th and 10th grade students participated in a pilot test of the Smarter Balanced Science Assessment. Due to the trial basis of the pilot test, students did not receive a score because the state of California deemed it would not be appropriate to provide results on an assessment that had not yet been validated. Here is a chart comparing the results by grade in ELA literacy. In this chart, the blue line represents the entire state. The red dashed line is Stanislaus County, and the orange bar is the district. When viewing English language arts results by grade level, we see slight increases leading up to the middle grades. We then see a spike in scores for our high school students, with 56% of our students meeting the standards. The high school scores are also exceeding the county scores. This chart shows the district trends by grade level that mirror the county and the state. Similar to ELA literacy, our high school scores are again exceeding the county scores. This chart represents district-wide subgroup performance in English language arts. Each green bar represents the percentage of students who scored standards met or standard exceeded in the district. The blue bar represents California statewide performance, and the red bar represents Stanislaus County. Moving from right to left, the first bar represents the subgroups as follows: all students, Asian, African American, Hispanic Latino, white, economically disadvantaged, English learners, and students with disabilities. The Asian and white subgroups are performing the highest at the state, district, and county level, while English learners and students with disability perform the lowest. This next chart represents performance on the Smarter Balanced mathematics. California is represented in blue, Stanislaus County in orange, and the district in gray. Again, moving from right to left, the first bar represents all students, then Asian, African American, Hispanic Latino, white, economically disadvantaged, English learners, and students with disabilities. In the area of mathematics, the Asian and white subgroups are performing higher than the other subgroups of students. In this slide, you see the district's data dashboard for elementary. In the elementary district, our eighth graders passing core academic courses is at 79%. Our Asian subgroup has the highest percentage of passing core courses. At our elementary sites, we saw a 14% growth in fourth grade writing proficiency scores from the previous school year. Our youngest learners in kinder and first grade are also showing that more students are starting school with early literacy skills as demonstrated on the Dibbles assessment. Third graders are also showing improvement in reading fluency with an increase of 4% from the prior year. While our elementary students are showing some growth, there is still work that needs to be addressed. We continue to prepare our elementary students for junior high and high school by making sure they are proficient readers and writers. On the 2016-17 Smarter Balanced results, students demonstrated slight growth from the previous year. In ELA, students increased slightly by 1% in math, and in math increased by 2%. We will also continue to see lower suspension rates and expulsions. The district experienced a 1% reduction in K-8 suspension rate and 0 expulsions. This slide depicts the data dashboard for high school. In the high school district, we continue to see lower suspension rates at 5%. Over the last 5 years, high school suspension rates have decreased from 15% to 5%, and expulsions fell from 52 students in the 12-13 school year to 6 students in the 16-17 school year. While we are proud of the work that programs like PBIS and restorative practices have provided as a means of supporting student behaviors, we know we need to continue our efforts in supporting individual students and families as a means of addressing gaps within subgroups. Our current high school graduation rate is 88% and has continued to increase over the last 3 years and exceeds that of both the county and the state. We have seen an increase in seniors completing A through G college entrance requirements at 38%, and more freshmen are on track for graduation at the end of their 9th grade year at 79%. We continue to have increased numbers in students enrolling in and completing advanced placement courses each year, an increase of 190 students from the 15-16 school year. The district also experiences increase in students participating in career and technical education courses and pathways. Our data indicates 45% of all high school students are participating in career and technical education courses. The state accountability system requires our district to report 4 local indicators: basic conditions at school, implementation of state academic standards, parent engagement, and school climate. The district has met all of these met the requirements for these indicators. More detailed information will be included in a future board report once released by the state. Through Smarter Balanced Scores, we are an important measure of student performance. Keep in mind that these are just the beginning of our discussion on how to improve the experiences for all students. As educators, it is imperative that we provide support to increase and improve the effectiveness of our instructional practices. State assessments must be followed by continuing to monitor and analyze the implementation of the standards and the adopted curriculum. Finally, supporting our students in all subgroups is critical to their success. Now that I've provided a review of the district data, I would like to invite Associate Superintendent Mack for additional remarks.
Although we still have work to do, we are excited to see growth this year. In a recent article from Modesto B, many of our sites showed the highest growth in the county on our SBAC. This year, we adopted new ELA curriculum in K-6 and 9-12. The Educational Services Department continues to provide professional development focused on our new adoption. As our data represents, we need to continue the emphasis on literacy, especially on foundational skills, continue providing professional development on instruction, and focus on our junior high. In the future, we will not only analyze our met and exceed students, we will include our not met results. This is a change on how we analyze data from the old CST era, where we focused on moving the bubble students. Along with other student performance indicators, Smarter Balanced Scores will appear on the California School Dashboard. Our next presentation will be on the new California School Dashboard, which is scheduled to be released by this December. We are ready to answer any questions the board may have.
Thank you very much. Are there any questions from the board? Trustee Newman?
Thank you, Mr. Schroeder. It's nice to have you up here giving a report for the first time. Thank you for your thorough report, and Ms. Mack. There's a lot of data. The things that stick out to me as big trouble spots are, of course, our math, as we've been talking about across the board. But one of the issues that that I'm particularly troubled about is Dibbles, and I know what Dibbles is. Dibbles is a reading assessment, and we talk about beginning of year and end of year. How can we improve that that percentage? Because kinder beginning of year 36%, and then kinder end of year at 52%. I would expect it to at least double, and I'm not seeing that in first grade either. And so, how do we really pinpoint our efforts to improve that?
Well, there's several pieces to that. You are correct. We should be seeing growth from the end of the year, not just seeing it even from the beginning of the year to the end of the year. The other piece to this, which I'm grateful for, is the ELA adoption that we just adopted. This is going to help us. It has a strength. The Wonders is noted for early literacy foundation. Also, we just finished from Director Kim Newton's lead, the professional development on all our teachers have now been trained on the Wonders, and so we'll start to see that the Wonders to fidelity in the classrooms, and I really believe this will help in the Dibbles results once we have good first time instruction with our new Wonders.
And is Dibbles a standard that is or a benchmark that's regularly used through other school districts in our area?
Yes, it is. I wouldn't say it's in all of our county, but it is an assessment that's used regularly in many districts.
And then the second issue, well, math, we've talked about that, and I'm sure Mr. Trustee Walker's got a lot to say about that one too. But the other issue that is particularly concerning is the decrease in sixth and seventh grade, and eighth grade, sixth, seventh, and eighth grade. Really troubling. Are we looking at some sort of demographic anomaly? Are we, particularly with regard to the seventh grade group, are we looking at a demographic anomaly of just a high percentage of kids that there's an anomaly there? Or is there some bigger trend that we're seeing, and is there any explanation there for that decrease in the scores?
Unfortunately, our data shows that we continue to drop in the seventh grade year. So I believe we're going to be discussing tonight a new adoption for seventh and eighth grade. We have not adopted our curriculum since 2004, so we are on the old standards, what we're teaching right now, and the test is with the new standards. So we need to align our adoption with our curriculum so that teachers can be teaching the standards that have been adopted.
And so it's a curriculum and issue.
Would be our first starts, so we can support them and provide them the professional development that we've provided this year with K-6 along with 9-12. It is a strong and immediate need that we have in junior high.
All right, thank you.
Thank you.
All right, Trustee Walker.
We'll start out with the easy stuff. Just on the AP classes, just so that we're talking about when you look at all those grades coming up in AP, it's safe to say that the AP courses we're taking here are the same AP courses they're taking in any other state in the country, and that they're not aligned to the standards. Just for my fellow board members, when I keep saying that we can adopt things so long as they meet or exceed, AP and IB programs are classic examples of that. We do not have to be aligned 100%. We can find curriculum that meets or exceeds the standards, and it is perfectly okay. We're doing it in our high schools now. I guess the second question I'd have on the high school scores, especially it's both sides, English and math. Safe to say that all the students that are taking those tests have not been taught in the Common Core, because our seniors graduating now are phased in. So we still don't have an accurate picture of what's going on with the students who have actually been taught in the new curriculum, correct?
If you're judging it from when SBAC or when the standards were adopted in first grade or kindergarten, that is correct. They have not hit the high school at this time.
So the next year's first year that our 11th graders will, this year. So
This
my
year,
junior
the eighth graders,
will be the first set of students who have tested on the SBAC that have come through the Common Core system. Or as my trustee Marks tells me to say, the new standards.
I would say that they started the new standards. I wouldn't say that they had it since first grade. That'll be several years from now before those first graders are in high school.
I'm just trying to differentiate between the high school scores, because I've, over my right shoulder, 3,000 pages of material. The high school scores in our 11th grade are very much different than the rest of this K through 8 testing. And they did not do integrated math. They didn't do MVP. And those children graduates, because I know most of these students, because they were a year ahead of my daughter, are doing traditional regular coursework. And so I think it's misleading, because when I look at the scores across the state, the one area we hold up currently, because I went back after 3 weeks ago or 2 weeks ago, we'll get back to that in the board conversation, where the State Board of Education did grade inflation across the state. I went back and ran another 50 pages worth of numbers, our data versus the state. We hold up fairly well in our 11th grade classes. It's after that that we fall off dramatically. And I just want to differentiate, because those students are taking different courses than everybody else.
I would go back to Trustee Newman when she talked about the demographics. Remember that we have feeder schools coming into our high school, which we do not have in our K-8. So that is a very significant difference and almost not a comparison because of the demographics that are coming into our high schools.
So over the hard stuff, the demographics is also very troubling for me. And we've talked about this, and I appreciate you guys taking the time with me 2 weeks ago before, or 3 weeks ago now. Prior to this being on this meeting, we moved it from last month to this month. is that I am troubled with the demographics, because where we are seeing movement, and we talk about 2% or 1%, it's very much relative to specific sites. I mean, when we look at 18 of our 22 elementary schools, there's no movement. There hasn't been movement over 3 years since the beginning, and they pulled the 14 data off the state website. I still have it. But there's been no movement, and it's not just us, and we agreed. It's the state as a whole. My issue isn't just with Modesto City Schools. My issue is with the entire state and the approach we've taken and the rapid way that we've gone about this, and it's sort of been 90 miles an hour. And when you look at the data, if we pull out our 4 schools that have a fairly medium to high ratio that's not 97, 98% economically disadvantaged, that's where the numbers are moving. They're not moving at the other 18 sites. They're not moving at the 2 junior highs that are mixed. They're not moving at Davis. They're not moving at Mo High, they move, but it's essentially, when you break the demographics down, it's the IB kids that are pulling those numbers, but then you look at the rest of it, and it drops through the bottom again. And so I have concerns, not just with us, but with the state and how we're doing this, and when do we take a step back? Because the outcome was supposed to be increasing student achievement and closing the achievement gap, and I don't see that in these numbers anywhere. And I've dug through these numbers religiously for years, and have spent a good part of 5 months digging through these going into this meeting. Where do you see the gap closing? Where do we see a number actually moving with these demographics? When we talk about our English learners, our economically disadvantaged, our Hispanic community, our African American community, we have a huge population that's at risk. And I think that we all want them to achieve, and I think they can. Where do we see movement? I don't. Not when I dig into this data. I'm just like, where do we see movement? I mean, I'm a data guy. I'm a results guy, and at some point we need to see something that says, this is the right thing to go, this is working here.
Good evening. I want to wish you well. Pam, I'm going to miss the handbags. I love looking at her handbags. She wears beautiful handbags. So I will miss those. But enjoy your retirement. First of all, I'd like to focus on the Dibbles. The Dibbles testing is a 1-minute test. Can you imagine kindergartners having to do their ABCs and read those words in 1 minute? That is not an accurate assessment of what these children know, because they don't have any think time when you give them a minute to do these segments of this test. So I don't want you to put a lot of credence in these tests. We need to be looking at other measurements to measure the growth of these students. We also need to be looking at what they come in with versus what they leave out with at the end of the year. Because when you go into South Modesto, you go into a school like Tuolumne and James Marshall, you have a lot of EL students who are learning English for the first time. And they're being assessed on this test, which is really, you're putting too much value in it, because this is just one component, and it's not testing how they're taught. There's a big difference in how you teach and what a test does. This is a computer. They go into a classroom, into a lab, and they're doing this test on a computer. That's not how they're taught every day, and that's not the assessment. The math I am very concerned about. You're using New York engagement, you're using Oregon math, you're using Utah math, and that's not how that test is set up. That math, we need to reevaluate what we're doing with math with these students, because the teacher can't even get through one lesson in a day, and they're supposed to be doing a lesson every day. And it's not possible. And this math is not working in this district at any level. I studied those scores from the beginning to the end, and those are flat scores. So something is very wrong. We need to reassess what we're doing, and we need to use multiple measures to show growth in our students and to show growth by the population that you're serving, not overall. We need to have more collaboration at the school levels so that teachers are collaborating with one another so that they can see what they need to be working on and focusing on emphasizing with their students instead of it being a robot learning. It cannot happen like this, people. We're doing a real disservice to our students with the way we're setting up our curriculum now. We need to reevaluate our curriculum. I am here to help you with that, and there are teachers who are here to help you with that. There are people who are very educational and knowledgeable, and somebody said that, oh, we need to get that country club school in here. They can give us some ideas. You've got teachers in your own district that have wonderful ideas. You've got some great programs going on that need to be used overall. And we need to use more different ways of teaching rather than everybody being in one standard set way. Give us a chance to be creative. Give us a chance to use those teachable moments with those students, and you will see an increase and a change in academic skills. Thank you.
Thank you. The board president, school board members. Sometimes I come up and I talk about lesson plans for the teachers, and they should all have them. And the reason why I say that is because in the state, when I was a teacher, all you have is what you call competency-based education. All the LCAP is a large IEP, individual education plan. That's all it is. And the reason why I always tell the teachers this is that I agree with most of everything, but a teacher goes to college to learn how to teach. They should be integrated in this curriculum, math, science, English, and if they have the opportunity to do lesson plans and look at this curriculum and do what they need to do, you'll be successful. The problem is that everybody tells teachers how to teach that have never taught. And therefore, you get every 4 years, you get a new president, new curriculum. The teachers are expected to do things that they can't do. Notice that they talk about every school Student Succeed Act. That's what you're really looking at now. And they talk about all of this stuff. And then when you look at the funding that they have taken all of the funding out. Teachers cannot teach. In math, what I would suggest is that you get these teachers who have some experience to actually start working on a curriculum that will work for your students. They know how to do it. They went to school to do this. And then when they get in here, they have these standards and they have to come up with things that they can't even do. So give them an opportunity to teach, and I'm pretty sure that they will do an excellent, excellent job. But the only way we can do this is to get their input and let them be at the table along with the parents. And the last thing I would say is that California School Dashboard indicators, they're only talking about 8 of these standards. They're talking about basic services, implementation of state academic standards, and I'm going to tell the teachers, because it's a state standards, Common Core is approved, then you're going to have to find ways to integrate this along in your curriculum so you can actually serve the people that need to be served, and that's our students. Thank you.
I've been listening to all of this, and I'm going to say proudly, I am a product of Modesto City Schools, to all of you, well known on Modesto High. And I worked at another school district for 14 years. And I think some of the things I saw that there was a disconnect from some of the feeder school districts coming into Modesto City Schools. Hence, you have some skewed numbers coming in when you're testing because some of the things were not quite the same. I think what I look at, and talking to a lot of teachers, I have a lot of friends who are teachers. I opted not to do that because I really felt that the teachers lost their autonomy in the classroom when I worked as a paraprofessional. And I say that very dishearteningly because those teachers are in the trenches with these children 180 days out of the year. These teachers have this vast knowledge, and yet somehow they're restricted in implementing what they were taught to do, and some of them what they have a passion to do. And restricting them with some of these programs, this Common Core, and I've heard talk about it, I've seen some of it, and I'm just absolutely aghast. I'm not a math whiz, but I can hold my own. But some of the stuff I look at and I think to myself, dear God, what are we going to be doing with these children? These up and coming children that are supposed to be our future. And these programs are inhibiting them in ways that is going to be very detrimental. And it's inhibiting our teachers who have that goal entrusted to them to teach them, to bring them along, to nurture them, to help them grow, to become educated, to choose and make reasonable choices through critical thinking, through analyzing, and through implementation. So what are we doing to foster that? I've been listening to Mr. Walker, and I've listened to some other teachers, and I'm scared for the future of our children. We really need to look back at what we're doing and how we're doing it, and giving these teachers more autonomy in their classroom so that they can do the job that they're there to do, which is to teach. Obviously, they would not have gone to school to get those degrees if they did not want to be the teachers of our future generations. Please listen very carefully to what you're being asked to review and to see how the outcome is going to be, because it is going to have dire effects on our students, not just in the testing realm, but in their future and how they think, how they act, how they interact, how they make choices for their future. So please, please really consider what you're doing and how you're going to do for the future. Their lives are at stake.
Thank you. Any other comments from the public?
Hi, Ryan Chambers. I spoke about this the last meeting, and I remember it being very obvious. Anyone could look at these numbers and just know that we're pretty low, okay? But I think we could do a lot of things to improve it. Like charter schools like Aspire we talked about last time. They have Collab Day every Wednesday. Okay, so it's good because it gets the teachers together and they kind of discuss what works and what may not work. And I feel like training in general is very important. I, as a sub for Modesto City Schools, have never received training on either Common Core or Wonders. And as a student at CSU Stanislaus, they haven't trained me on it either. I think also because I may not work for Modesto City Schools if I graduate from CSU Stanislaus. Every single district uses different curriculum, so I don't think it should be taught in college. I think it should be taught to the teachers for that specific district, because you may teach in Wonders and then they may not teach for Modesto City Schools. They may teach in Salida where they use Eureka Math or something. Also, the problem to me is not so much Common Core, it's more about how it's implemented. Like I said, the lack of training, I think, is an issue, and just kind of rushing over into it without adequately training teachers and parents and subs on how to do it. And subs actually take up a good deal of a student's education. About 6 months of a student's K through 12 education is from substitutes. So I do think it's important. So, I mean, here's one example also for why our reading scores are so low. When I worked at Tuolumne, the librarian told me that they have the third lowest reading scores in Modesto City Schools, and they're trying to bring it up. But then the problem is I see a lot of this stuff on here. It seems like it's more like PR based, and it's like we need to be focused on getting the scores up instead of just artificially getting the scores up. Like, we really need to be teaching these students. And what I've noticed is students like to pick the easy books, like the books they've seen a movie on before, or the books that are like, lower than their reading level, just to get, just to get easy points. Okay, so I think we need to fix that, really enforce the reading level thing, and have them pick harder books to keep challenging themselves to get better. And that's pretty much all I have to say. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other comments from the public? Comments from the board? Right. Student Representative Jimenez.
I'd just like to say in relation to math, I've been tutoring the last 4 to 5 years in math, and I've heard a lot of complaints about the Common Core standards, not the Common Core in theory. In theory, it sounds great. The way I've heard it best explained is we're teaching kids, if you ask, let's say, a kindergartner, why is a fire truck red? Now you're asking them, what color is the fire truck and why? So it's red or it's yellow based on the environment. And in theory, that sounds great, but from what I've heard from the students and the teachers, it's that specifically in the math department is the curriculum is lacking. From teachers, I've heard the examples just aren't good enough, and some examples aren't thorough, and there aren't enough examples. Some of us lucked out. In my grade, we're still on the calculus statistics pathway, but for the other students, I know I've helped freshmen out, and I look at some worksheets in the integrated math, and I've never seen it before. And again, as a calculus student, you would be expected that I would understand this. And it's not that it's substantially difficult, but the material is just worded in a way that you wouldn't see it. And I'm sure we've all seen this if you have grandchildren or children that ask you, second graders even, I don't know what this means. None of us do. And it's just the curriculum is lacking. Thank you.
Thank you. Trustee Walker?
I will lean forward here. Most of what I'll do here is I like to talk to my fellow board members. Lighthouse study talks about a vision of expectations for students. I have high expectations. I believe our students can achieve high things. I have high expectations for our teachers. I believe they can achieve great things. I think part of our job is to hold folks accountable, and we're to be held accountable. That's a multi-directional pathway. We have a job to hold the district accountable. The district has a job to hold us accountable to be well representing of the community. We also have the job to hold the state accountable for what they're asking us to do while they're backtracking, and I'll come back to that in a minute. We have a strong shared belief. We also have to be data savvy. We have to understand that even though data may not be good, it needs to be used to direct improvement. And there's nothing good in this data. There really isn't. And I'm going to come back to what the state did in a minute, but I want to take a second because Ms. Williams, I love to have company. It's so lonely up here making this statement. And I agree, but what I will tell you is when you're talking about the Engage New York, it has now been renamed Eureka. The problem isn't that it's not aligned to the standards. The problem is it's 120% aligned to the standards. It's very procedural, and it came from Eureka, because now they sell it instead of give it to us for free, so it's worth gold, came from Engage New York, and it was named Engage New York because it was previously named Common Core Math, but it went into New York first, because that was the first state to implement Common Core policies. There's a great deal of rebranding going on, and not everybody pays attention. And I do find it frustrating, and I'm trying to take Trustee Mark's advice not to use Common Core and call it the new standards, because it gets people upset, but it's a rebranding. And it is deceptive. And when you talk to Mr. McGill and you talk to Mrs. Harrington, and we talk about these younger students, automaticity is important. But if you say memorization, now people tell us we're doing the wrong thing. You're not supposed to memorize, you're supposed to know how. But if we're talking about these younger students in second, third, fourth, and first grade, math facts are critical. That is the automaticity. That is building up the recall. And that by their nature, these young children are going to memorize what we put in front of them. If we're not doing simple math facts and we're doing solve the problem 3 ways, draw a picture, write a mini essay, flip it upside down, and then run back out the door, and then recall it and remember it when you come back next year, they're trying to memorize all this. I have children, that's what they do. They're overwhelmed. And so they don't recall what we used to do with math facts. And so the retention isn't there. And you see it as the scores move across grade levels. Over my left shoulder, those books, those binders. Every single score from Modesto City School student for 3 years, and I've got the 4th year sitting on my desk. We have to talk about how do we hold people accountable. The state just made this change. And I don't know if I've ever been more frustrated in my life. I said, Trustee Newman, we were in this room 2 years ago, not Latino, I'm in demographic land. League of Women Voters, and we were talking about these math scores, and they asked a question. I talked about them being aligned to NAEP, and you would never get over that NAEP barrier, and I mentioned then they would move the cut scores. The state's hair's on fire on this issue. They held a special meeting, they brought a special group in, decided to technically adjust the scores. They don't know who this group is because they haven't identified the individuals. They don't publish the minutes, so we don't know what was done in this meeting. They come out, they adjust the scores. What is these numbers? They're over here. Because they're worried about County Office of Education being able to help us, I don't want their help. ELA, from 81 districts in trouble that last year, statewide, went to 169. On math, 119 districts went to 231 this year. That's not flat, that's falling to the bottom of the barrel. They moved those numbers, 48 and 64, 47 and 89. In the South, where I grew up, we call that putting a pig in a dress. Nothing changed. They adjusted the scores and said, you're good to go, keep bouncing. This is exactly what I said they would do 3 years ago and 4 years and 5 years ago. Adjust the cut scores, make it look better. Let's throw a bunch of money at the problem and just keep bouncing down the road. We owe our students more than that. We owe our community more than that. And I don't have a problem working with something that works. And to Trustee Marks telling me not to call it Common Core, I don't care what you call it. It was the old system didn't work, the new system doesn't work, the next system doesn't work. If it doesn't work, cut bait and let's find something that works for these children. We're in a state with 1 in 5 people in poverty, 20%. I saw a report last week, it's going as high as 1 in 3. Wouldn't surprise me. Rated 41st or 46th in state spending on education, depending on what study you use. Highest English learner community in the country while being underfunded. That's the core problem, and we're spending money on networks, $30–40 million that was not reimbursed by the state. They went to block grant reimbursements, so counties like Santa Clara who got supplemental grant funding in districts like Story and White or East Palo Alto were able to put certain monies towards their children because they had networks in place. Central Valley, South San Joaquin, Stanislaus, Merced, Northern Fresno, Tulare, all that money went to networks and computers. At some point, this isn't about pulling off a Band-Aid. It's about, as to your last meeting, Trustee, President's Law, we're doing medical reference. Code Blue crash cart. These numbers are flatlined. They are literally flatlined. And if you find me a number that isn't flatlined, I'll tell you where it came from. Show me a number, I'll tell you which school it came from. Whether it was Lakewood, and if I disaggregate Lakewood scores, and I've got Lakewood disaggregated, the students who are so economically disadvantaged, again, fall through the cracks. It doesn't matter if it's Roosevelt, Lakewood, Insulan, Fremont, and it's not our feeder districts because they're in trouble also, minus Sylvan, but Sylvan is an economically advantaged community. I can predict these numbers. I've predicted them every single year they've come out. They will not change next year. We're 90, 120 days from testing again. April, March, April, May. We're in November. These numbers will not move next year. If they move, the high school numbers will come down because the students that are coming in were taught in the Common Core fashion versus my calculus student on my right. And they will not move. And how long, my question to my fellow trustees, are we going to listen to the state and do what they say, which is just wait? How long are we going to wait before we take some action? Because it's not working. And we owe our children more than this. We need leadership. We need to stand up. And as a board, we have the ability to set direction, take a step back, and evaluate what changes need to be made. And aligning 100% to standards that are causing every community in this state to fall, and especially those who have economically disadvantaged populations, which we have, much larger than the state averages, we are going to get hit harder. And groups that are in the lower 5%, and when they start actually holding us accountable and start actually using the scores instead of ignoring them, will get interventions. I don't want to be one of those districts in the bottom 5%.
Thank you. Trustee Newman?
Thank you, Trustee Walker, for your passion about this issue. I appreciate all the hard work he gave us, and you've been doing a lot of extra work on the data, and I appreciate it. I don't always, we don't agree on some of the issues regarding particularly Common Core math, but I want to say there's a couple takeaways for me on these scores. The first is, this is not acceptable. This is not where we should be. This is not where, and I think Trustee Walker and I are in agreement on that. This is not where we should be at. But I would, the second takeaway is with regard to the math scores, particularly our high school math scores. They were poor and not anything to brag about before Common Core came in. The CST test scores were poor then too in math in our high school. In fact, they're kind of right in the same range, in the 20% range, as they were when I first came on the board. The CSTs were still in force, and so this is a mindset. That's my third takeaway. It's a mindset inside and outside the district, that there's students who for whatever reason they can't achieve, and I just disagree with that. I think, and I've seen kids that can work and do this, and so we have to, it's a mindset change, it's a cultural change inside and outside the district, and we have to be a force for that change. The LCAP should be the vehicle that does that, because we're trying to draw in the public. It's a way that the funds are tied. That's why we do this comprehensive report, because the funds have to be tied to the results, and so, but it takes more than money. I think that's ultimately what, now that we're in year 4 of LCAP, am I right? Are we, yeah, year 4 of LCAP. It is going to take more than just money. It is, we have to look at the curriculum issues, and I appreciate Ms. Mack's comments on explaining some of the issues regarding 7th and 8th grade. And so that's a curriculum issue. And then once we adopt new curriculum, then it becomes a training issue, training and implementation. So those are my takeaways. I'd like to see us as a board, when you turn to B515, there's 3 elementary schools, well, 4, that I've highlighted across, that I believe that if we could, at one time we did have a SIG grant, a school improvement grant. If we could maybe think about it for Franklin, Marshall, Shackelford, or Wright, if you look at those scores on page B515, maybe that's where we go next, to really pinpoint those schools that and those students there, and those are large schools where we could make some positive inroads.
Thank you. Trustee Marks?
Well, it's always difficult to get this kind of news of where we're at, and that we haven't made a great gains in the last couple of years. And I remember when we did the, we changed to NCLB, No Child Left Behind, when Senator Ted Kennedy and President Bush wanted the schools to do that, which was a huge change for us, because then we were doing demographics at the time, and we were not aware of how our students were doing based on their ethnicity. So that was a new era for us as a district. And yet when those test scores came out that first year, we were all surprised, but in a different way, because we were outperforming the state, we were outperforming the county, and our students were doing extremely well. And I don't know what's happened or why we're in the place that we're at today. I am really concerned about whatever decisions we make in the future that we go. I think that my fellow trustees have similar grave concerns, And I think that because we are doing so poorly in the whole state, it's really, it's just very disturbing. Anyway, but I did find that one little glimmer of hope in this, in here, that you, one of the data points was on B5-8, and it was the reading fluency, writing proficiency, and math fluency. I was really, that gave me some hope that if these students that are in 2nd grade, 3rd grade, 4th grade, and 6th grade continue on, I believe that they will do well, and if they continue to improve, they will do extremely well. I don't have the answers, and I don't know if you all have any answers. You didn't tell us that you had any tonight as to what our next steps are, but I really believe that this should be placed on our agenda as soon as our new board members are seated, and have an in-depth discussion about what our next steps should be, and how we can address this, because I know something has to change. I know 2 years in a row to not have anything change doesn't tell me that a lot's going to change by next year. So I think we should start looking at that and see if it is curriculum, if it is teacher morale, if it is something that we haven't addressed tonight. Maybe there's something that that we need to come together on as a team and say this is how we need to do this as a district. I think the board's open to that, and I hope that we all can have that heartfelt discussion. I remember when we did our demographics and we talked about their suspension and expulsion rates, and I've mentioned this in the past, but I was in Sacramento at a meeting, and no other district in the state had actually published their expulsion suspension rates, and we were one of the first in the state to do that. And I remember in this room of about 300 board members, they asked, has anybody published this? And I raised my hand. I was in the back of the room, remember? I raised my hand, and they asked what the public response was, because I think that was the fear that everybody had, was what's the public response? And I said, actually, the public has been great, because if we don't acknowledge we have a problem, we can't address it. So to me, that's what we're acknowledging tonight, is that we do have some problems that we need to deal with, and publishing these and knowing them and actually discussing them as a board, I think is a good thing, and I believe that will help us make the wise decisions. So I appreciate staff and all the time that you spent, and I know you were just as discouraged as we were, and I know the teachers are as well. It's not fun to see these scores, but I think that as we move forward, we can make good decisions, and we all up here, and those who are just elected, I'm sure, care about where our district's going and how our students are doing, and want to make wise decisions. And granted, we may not all agree on everything the same, but I believe that we will make wise decisions together as a team. So I look forward to seeing where we're going in the next few months, and getting the dialogue from the new board members and where they'd like to see us go as well. So, but thank you for sharing tonight and the heartfelt passion that everybody has up here about education and our district. We really care. So, thank you.